complain to management to give me another hour. 2 hours a day is just not enough to get everything out that you, my listener, need to hear. Even though you have just 5 minutes, I'm very grateful for that 5 minutes, and I would hope that you, my listener, will tell a friend about my program here on Nooga Radio, and that will double my listenership. I'm just so glad to have you along for just a few minutes. I know you're busy, you've got things going, you're coming and going in and out, and right now it's pouring in North Chattanooga. Hickson has just come down into the parking lot here. There's a little lake out there among the bits of gravel, and I'm glad to be in the studio looking out the great window here on my left, and glad just to be able to think about the work we have to do in the way of conversation. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. If you have a story you want to tell me on anything that we've brought up or anything other than that, that's also fine. You can change the subject. I'm glad to entertain what you have to come toward me. I have I'm looking at my stack. Every day I come to the studio with my stack, and some days I never run short, and today's not an exception. And that's why if I had a third hour, I would say probably take third hours for calls. Okay, that would be for you to call in from the 11 o'clock to the 12 o'clock hour. We have at noon, by the way, if you were able to hang on past that, we have CBS News at the top of every hour. CBS, which is the best radio news you can get. We have an hour-long local newscast with Russell, our news director. It's a whole hour of local news, and but it's a program that understands that the radio listeners come and go, right? Every 15 minutes, effectively, there's a new crowd, right? And that's because very few people, you might be the exception, can hear a whole length of something or other because of their occupation or their time or disposition, and they can hear a whole program. That's not very many people can do that. They have their lives, and we understand that. And if we can just get a few minutes every day with you, we are very, very gratified. And now, what was I saying? I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, after news, we have the news program, which is a newscast that's about 10 minutes long or so, and we just play that a couple times. And then at 1, we have a very important program, the Bloomberg Politics, Power, and Policy and Power program about life in Washington. And then after that, there's a Bloomberg Markets program. And of course, Sean Hannity. We are the Sean Hannity affiliate here, the Sean Hannity station in Chattanooga. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. It's Nooga Radio on Facebook, and on YouTube it's Hot News Talk Radio. And our goal is peace and prosperity, you could say, and loving our neighbors and buying local, trying to be loco-centric. It's an excellent, being loco-centric and being Nooga-centric is a healthy exercise. Though I would hope that my listener, are in some respects an international man, right? The cosmopolite who is working on being a loco-centric, Nooga-centric. And I'm David Tulis, the leading Nooga-centrist in Chattanooga, living out the ideal that Chattanooga and Hamilton County, where you, my listener, just happen to be, maybe just passing through, maybe you live here, maybe you're tuning in dreamily thinking, if only I could live in Tennessee. Moving here from high-tax Connecticut or oppressive California, just if I could move to Chattanooga, move to Tennessee, a state with no income tax, right? There's no tax on wages, though there is the whole income tax, which the Republicans wisely, smartly have voted to phase out. Many benefits. We do have a few good things that the Republicans have done. That being one of them. But we're here, and we think that we're the center of the universe, and that's just because we're made in the flesh, and we have eyes and nose, and we have a limited occupation of the space in which our bodies fill. We are souls with bodies, right? That's how C.S. Lewis describes the human being, and we're here. And so, rightly, we think that what happens if there's a flood on Main Street, a main breaks on Main Street, that's more important than 200 people in an Indonesian ferry that sunk. That's worth 4 paragraphs under an 18-point head on page A4, whereas a main break is on page 1, right? and that's just because the news people do understand at least that much about how the world works, even though much of what they propose in the way of reporting is a kind of fantasy, where the dangers are all around us. And think of the dandy claims of today, that North Korea threatens millions of people. Well, that's like saying a ping pong ball is threatening a basketball, right? You compare the size of the two economies, the American economy, the Korean economy, and Korea has $18 billion GDP, and what is ours? I mean, our defense budget is $1 trillion. How can we be concerned about that? Think of the scale problem there. We have we have the president and these shills in Washington trying to terrify us. And I just have to, when I hear stories about Korea and the urgent reporting in the morning, I almost have to laugh as I shave off the whiskers, right? As I'm there at the vanity, at the mirror, and using my 6-headed razor blade and the foam on my face. And my wife Jeanette is getting ready. She's a homeschool mom, and she's a tutor, and she's off to her tutorial in the morning. And they're playing in the background are the shrill narratives out of New York. And I just laugh, and I've given up making corrective comments, because I think that just irritates her, and she already knows what I think about a few things. Though I think my wife Jeanette doesn't really care about some of the deep state questions that I look at, probably because they're so tediously boring. They're just tedium, right? Legal tedium, and just move on, David, move on. So I've come to accept that. I used to be married to a woman who cared intimately about all that I did and thought, and but as I you might say become more specialized, I think it's hard to explain things and give reasons for things. And so sometimes I drop lines to her as she's dabbing on a bit of mascara, what my guest is going to talk about today, or what I'll be doing afterwards, or I posted such and such, and it's a very interesting story. And yesterday, I got mail from Grenda Ray Harmer, the inmate at the State Slave in Wartburg, Tennessee. And one letter came as notebook paper that had been taped shut. It was not with an envelope. And so I was getting my butterfly knife out of my desk drawer, which I think is illegal to have them, but it's in my house, so it's harmless. And I was opening a letter, and I said something. I said, I think Grenda Harmer may be in grave danger because the warden, I said, has placed him within very close proximity of a gang member, a man who beat him up earlier. And I said, this seems to be an effort at intimidation. So she said, well, what can you do about it? And don't tell me about it, she said. And though Jeanette is a very empathetic, she's a very loving woman. I think when the people with whom I deal have distress, she's not really attuned to it. Or she's not thinking that there's a real problem there, or that there's anything we can do about the problem. And so I can't console myself with discussions with my wife about legal matters, right? Even though in my most recent work, which is coming under pressure, by the way, I do it all in sympathy and in love and mercy. And you're saying, what am I talking about? Well, on Sunday, I began a project. It's called administrative notice. Now, I'm not a legal expert, but I've read a lot of law and a few cases from the courts, and I've come to an understanding on how the system works. Okay, that's how I can give a deep state analysis. And there's a deep state story working right now in the background with an open records request to the Department of Safety and Homeland Security about little shenanigans going on, offending the citizenry. And it's an open records request that I filed in the case of the Noma Strawberry Plains a couple of years ago, the same issue. And so is that commissioner, the important commissioner in Nashville, the Republican nominee or the Republican designee, works out how to elude my query for information. I gave some time Sunday night to Title 55. Now I'm holding up for my formerly newsprint ink stained fingertips, Title 55. It's my copy, the Tennessee Code annotated. It's not a current number, and I always get the freshest from the LexisNexis version online. And I say that I did this Sunday because I've been thinking about how to use that day, the Lord's Day, and how it's a day of rest. So why am I reading a law book for 3 hours in a Panera Bread store on Gad Road? Well, my son was in a church event nearby, and I didn't want to go all the way home from Lee Highway. So I said, well, I'll just park myself, buy a coffee, and drink it, nurse it along, and work on reading this book and using the online access to do some research. The research I'm doing is not work. I decided, okay, this is a mercy I'm doing to a poor woman whose husband is dying, and I'm trying to help her deal with a legal threat to her person. And that is because she has to travel on the roads. And Title 55 is the transportation statute. Highways and boulevards is one, and then motor vehicle code. And I said I'm going to consume this whole volume. And I've been working at it for some time, but I have an exigency to finish this administrative notice. And it is about a mercy. And so I said, well, I'm here. Is this the proper use of God's day? See, I think about these things, and I'm thinking that because it's a mercy for this person, the sooner I can finish it for God's glory, the better it is. Because this notice is a defensive mechanism. It is a claim upon the facts that, if properly presented, denies a state actor the good faith defense of "I didn't know and I was not aware." That's the reason for administrative notice under the Uniform Administrative Procedures Act in Tennessee law. So that is something I'm working on. I know you think, oh, it just sounds so obscure. It just sounds so boring. And Mike is telling me, David, the driver's license issue is just bogus. No one's interested in it. It doesn't really matter. No one's going to agree with you. The courts are not going to let the Jay Hirsch case fly. They're not going to rule in his favor. And because the Court of Appeals in that criminal case completely overlooked important stabbing questions about justice and the rights of the people, constitutionally guaranteed, God-given, inalienable, and inherent rights of the people, defended by this lone working man, this poor and impoverished working man in Middle Tennessee. It's not going to care about what he has to say. The Court of Appeals rejected his claims, and the High Court's going to just overlook them. And why do you think, David, that anybody cares about the right of travel? Okay, it's a property right. Okay, your listener's son may be affected by it. Your listener's son can either travel freely on the public right of way, on the people's roads, or he can do it under the protection of the Department of Safety by permission. Why do you think anybody cares? Everybody knows you have to have a driver's license to drive, right? Everybody knows that driving is a privilege, and so on. Why would you say differently? Why do you want to present the Minority Report? And who cares, right? Who cares about this forgotten area of liberty that Roger Roots writes about in another one of his papers? I mentioned him today for the second time. The first paper that I reposted at Nooganomics.com is Are Cops Constitutional? And the second one is The Forgotten Right of Travel. And he I think misses a couple of important things in the Tennessee construct. And so that construct is the one that I'm looking at. Yes, on the Lord's Day, is it work? Well, it's a work in mercy. And that's how I've seen it. And I'm saying I have a liberty to do this work that benefits other people, that benefits you, my listener, and that's part of my profession, right? My labor in journalism is that. And I give you my results right here on the David Tulis Show at Nooga Radio at 800-8949, 800-8949. And because I care about that, I said this isn't work, and I'm not, because the Lord's Day, the commandment was that you shall not do any of your normal labors, right? You, nor your ox, nor your ass, nor your maidservant, your manservant, your son or your daughter, all are to rest. All are to rest. And how we have our rest in the Lord Jesus. And that is what my consolation is. Though I may not be doing what the commandment seems to require, I have my rest in the Lord Jesus, who saved me from my sins, right? And I can't carry my sins. I can't possibly get them forgiven by any other means than him. And so I'm resting in the promise of forgiveness, the promise that he's going to make me aware of my sins and he's going to guard me from my temptations, right? I have temptations too, right? Just like you. And, wicked thoughts and vanity and fear. These are all idols that come into my heart. And so I'm working to save this old woman who's traveling on the public right of way with a dying military man husband. She says it's terminal. And so I'm working on this notice, which means I'm reviewing online and in my very badly marked up copy of Title 55, which I'm holding here, the Tennessee Code annotated. Now, you my listener, you could do me a great mercy. If you could buy me a set of new ones, it's about $400. I would love that. I'd like to have all the new cases in there. The annotated. The reason it's called annotated is because the court cases are in the book, right? You have the book with all the court cases. So that means that you've got the law in statute and the living way the law exists in the rulings, right? The opinions of the court, where the law applies to a particular fact basis, and there's a ruling, and that it sort of explains how the law works. These annotations are court cases, sometimes legal articles. And in those notes, you have how the law lives right now. And for me, that would be just a wonderful thing to have. So what I do is I use the current statute online, LexisNexis, and then I mark up my copy for thinking. Because in many areas there's no change. There is no revision of the law. And things often are just the same year after year. So that's what I've been doing. And administrative notice, you ask about that. I'm thinking that it is a very exhilarating method. And what it requires, as I've explained at least once, I think, maybe and you were not there that day, is that it lays out all the law, all the statutes, the regulations, and the court rulings and parts of the Constitution that apply to a particular dispute, right? A dispute that you have with the state. And in that laying out, you deny the state actor the good faith defense, which means that if he moves against you in some way, against your rights, hurting you, depriving you of your limbs, your property, your rights, your time, that he's doing it in bad faith. And that's the thing you don't want. You don't want ever, if you're a state actor, to act in bad faith. You always want to be acting in good faith, right? You intended well, you intended the best. It's just that the party here just got trampled by me. But I didn't know. I didn't intend these things to happen. I did not intend to violate the law. And I intended to respect him, but I just rolled over him and crushed him. There won't be the good faith defense with that if there has been proper notice, and the notice is in the realm in which the state lives, and that is in the realm of administrative law. Administrative law. It is you might think an awfully tedious thing to think about, but modern executive government lives above the law, above the Constitution, with many of its deeds, you might say, ex cathedra, from nothing. Ex nihilo. Ex nihilo is from nothing. From nothing they come. There's no source for that activity. There's no source for that gigantic system. And there's at least one gigantic state system in Tennessee that is, I would say, completely outside the law. A private act, if you will. Remarkable development, which I've probably underreported on, but many things are simply outside the law. But then, and here's the interesting part: the state operates in administrative realms. And if you read Title IV about all the agencies that exist, they're all executive and executive government, and they're all under and in the administrative realm. So how is it that the administrative realm traps you, my listener? If you're free, if you are a member of the free Republic of Tennessee, right? You are a member of the free people of Tennessee, as we're called in the Constitution. And how is it that you have gotten pulled down, pulled underneath this sea, this Sargasso Sea of seaweed, if you will, And there you are under the seaweed, gasping for breath. You're going to be drowning in that realm. And everybody in that realm does drown, and no one comes out of it. Very few come out of it, I would say. Well, how do we get back to the upper realms where there's clean air, clear air, where we can breathe freely? You might say protected by our constitutional guarantees, our God-given rights. This is the work that I have in front of me. How do we get above the Sargasso Sea and into the clean, pure air of liberty, of freedom? I'm working on that question. David Tulis, thanks.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD.